All systems go. Cleared for takeoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, a.k.a. ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of the weekly Sunday review show. Got my guy Nades here with me, as always, going to be breaking down all things Week 3, yesterday's action. We've got the $20 Millie Maker winner, got the $333 Wildcat winner. Shout out to Drew Dinkmeyer. Does a lot for the DFS community, just a great guy in general. Going through some of the other stuff you guys want to see, we've got our stack rankings, another week where they just absolutely crushed. Shout out to our guys G. Risen and Big Marley. Got some live final seats yesterday, some cash. Got Big Marley took down a tiers slate, which he does all the tiers content on our site, specifically breaking it all down. It was basically right in the notes. So you could have checked it out there. He won 20 grand with that. And then just a ton of members got the job done as well. Nades, happy to be here with you on a Monday morning. As always, what's going on, my friend? How you doing?
No, always excited to jump on here with you. Love this show. My favorite show of the week. Always love to refine your process, take a look what happened, what went wrong. If things did go wrong, sometimes, right, variance just doesn't fall your way. I'm sure you'll talk about that with a couple more right there, right? The door is wide open and a wind gust comes and shuts that door in front of you. Pretty hurtful there, but it's coming, man. Ready to dive in and take a look at it.
Yeah, Nade's talking about my King of the Beach. You guys know I love these trophies, trying to get back and get the first place one. That's a second and a third, but it's been wild. Thursday Night Football, I got second in the main one over the weekend. Yesterday, I got 3 top 5s going in on Sunday. Just some stupid spots where I'm the next best by like 25 points, but the guy in front of me somehow has 240. So there's that. And then last night, second place again in the showdown slate. So it's definitely coming. I always say there's a difference between can you close, getting close, or can you close? Same spelling, same word on paper, but there is a difference. You got to get the job done, got to close that door to move on. But I'm expecting this to be a big year. It's going to be good. We're only on week 3. A lot to break down here. Before we get into it, I want to remind everyone very quickly, this show is brought to you and presented by LineStar. You can go to shipitnation.com/LineStar app. You'll be able to see all the stuff that we're going to be pulling up here in just a second. So before we do that, let's get it back here. Let's go to the 2-screen overlay. We've got the perfect lineup here, Nades, and we'll start with this. Just grand scheme overview on the slate, insane, right? Everyone who had Mostert thought that they were getting crushed in the beginning, like, oh, that should have been him, that should have been him. He still comes back and gets you 4 touchdowns. So the Miami Dolphins putting up 70 points is what we're talking about. Just insane. Look at the perfect lineup here, Nades. We got Herbert, Keenan Allen, 3 Miami Dolphins, right? The 2 running backs and Tyreek. You got Tank Dell, Laporta, Thielen getting the old, what was the narrative? The Andy Dalton loves him. That's why he's there narrative. Well, it certainly paid off. And just slot in general against that team has been crushing. And then Buffalo gets their 32 points, is I believe the highest owned defense on the slate by a decent margin. They were, but not sure how much it was by. I think it was like almost 20%. Next closest might have been 13 or something. But give me your first thoughts, Nades, on this perfect lineup, scoring 331 at 49.5 salary usage, and the slate in general, how you thought it played out.
Yeah, well, first thing, there's a lot of chalk that did obviously smash. That's why you see a ton of high scores here. Anytime we look at and you review a perfect lineup and a team scores 70 points, you have to assume that wild things are going to be in there, like Achane and Mostert, right, back to back, just absolutely incredible there. And Tyreek still getting the job done there. Just overall, pretty crazy week in general. Some games went the way they were expected. Some games obviously didn't, but that's NFL. That's what always happens. And that's why so important not to be results oriented, right? And just stick to a process, create a process, learn how to have a process. And that's what this show's here to help, right? This is a big part of your process, my process, and should be a big part of everyone's process. But overall, I mean, interesting week by far. The Carolina Seahawks game shooting out was kind of crazy there. That Detroit and Atlanta game, obviously Laporta got there, which you see here in actually all the lineups we're going to review, that value a little bit above that value range that everyone wanted to go at tight end, which seems to be a common theme, Tambo, over the 3 weeks here that we're reviewing, right? That tight end, everyone likes to punt tight end, and last couple of weeks it's been that tight end in that kind of mid tier, right above that range. So that's definitely an interesting point there. But overall, I mean, pretty good week. The Chargers Minnesota game that everyone wanted to play, got there. Some pieces got there, right? But could have got there a lot more. There was a lot of Kirk Cousins was just pretty brutal to start that game, things like that. So definitely an interesting week.
Yeah, and of note, this is crazy, but you don't see this often. Here's the difference. It's way off, obviously, when you see 54.3 here, but 331.36. We know this. This is why we just look at this quickly off the top. It's hard to get to the optimal. But crazy enough, the guy that won the $20, which I'm sure you guys, if you're watching this show, have seen at least something on this already. He duped himself. Looks like he probably just was hand building and didn't know, because the only thing DraftKings doesn't show, and you'll see it when you look at some of the apps and stuff, is that he had his flex switched. It was like Tyreek in the wide receiver, Adam Thielen in the flex, and then he switched it in another one. So it looks like two different lineups on that, but you saw it dupe in the main tournament. But his only difference, Nades, was he had Goff instead of Herbert and Kenneth Walker III instead of having Achane there at 5,000. So when you see that, he got all these other plays perfect. He was very close to the perfect lineup, which is just crazy to see in general. So move on. But before we move on, I do want to look at this, though. We brought it up. We previewed it yesterday, Naves. We've showed it the last 2 weeks on here, talked about it plenty of times. You know, this is our stack rankings over at ShipItNation.com. They've been on fire, and on fire once again. You see it here, the breakdown from yesterday's last update before we got to the final numbers. But Tua, Tyreek, Cousins, Jefferson, Osborne, Herbert, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Stroud as one of the cheap stacks with Tank Dell. You still had Love, who, all right, decent day. Could have hit Musgrave in stride there. That would have been nice too. Josh Downs had a pretty decent day for his price tag, and not showing up on the perfect lineups, but Laporta right there. I mean, if you just look at some of this stuff at the top, I think you can take it twofold, because when you go to some of those main lineups, it's a lot of what's included on the winning lineups anyway. And for those that don't know, it's not just your breakdown. Like, obviously, Josh Allen is pretty good on any given slate. Guys like Deshaun Watson can be good on any slate. Like, all these guys that you could see pop are not up there. Lamar and Mark Andrews weren't popping as much. I like them, mind you, but just to say it, this is taking the actual value. So 1 is like the value 1, 2 is the value 2 to give us a value-based score. And then we also have it linked in with our ownership, sponsored by LineStar, who the show is sponsored by, to show you guys sort of what that total ownership looks like and gives you an idea of some of these stacks you can get after, whether it's your small field, large field, single entry, MME, whatever you want to do. But when you do look at some of these winning builds, Nades, you can see how you can shake this out. And then you also see stuff like the Panthers and the Seahawks down here. The Browns are down here. Some of these secondary plays that you could see, if it's not going to be a passing game for the Seahawks, maybe you get in on a guy like Kenneth Walker III. If, you see Thielen still up here, maybe that can make sense. I'm going to go to a running back in the Seahawks game. I'm going to use Thielen as the run back, and you'll see some of that. Just any thoughts, Nades, on these stack rankings? Obviously, anybody that's watching or any members that have been using them have been doing quite well with them. We had a huge day yesterday overall in week 3 for Sunday.
Yeah, so I use these a lot. Actually, I play 5 main teams every week, and like I said, I love that $33 5 max contest, and I use these stack rankings a lot. I had that Jordan Love stack there, which was looking pretty hurtful. He put up about 25 DraftKings points in 1 quarter there in the 4th. Miss Musgrove there on a wide open. I mean, if he hits him in stride there, who knows what happens? Could have went crazy there, so that was hurtful. But, I mean, he still got the job done. Obviously, the other quarterbacks nuked the slate, right? So Love's 26 DraftKings points at his price tag. Usually on a normal slate would have been good, right? He was right there. CJ Stroud crushed again. Had that stack, right? But like the Keenan Allens, the KJ Osbornes, right? Everyone knew Tyreek Hill, Smithy, right? That's a common one. Obviously, the price points, the total, everything like that, the value score checks out there. But Laporta, right? I played Josh Downs on a mini stack there with Mark Andrews. I mean, there's just different things on these stack rankings that continue to come through. And it's not just a fluke. I mean, it's 3 weeks back to back. We've shown it. The timestamp is there. We're not updating this stuff after the slate locks and after results come in and be results oriented as a marketing mimic, anything like that. I mean, this is truly content that we put out here for our subscribers to build off of. And every sort of feedback we've gotten in the Discord and members that look at this, I know, Tambo, you look at this a lot, not to say that you're going to go in here and say, oh, I'm going to play Kirk Cousins, Jefferson, Osborne, but maybe I land on a last piece, right? And I'm in that Osborne range. Osborne ranks very good on here. Maybe I throw him in there, right? And do a little mini stack. So just using this tool in a different way than to just set and dry, right? That you have to use this stack, but picking those ancillary secondary pieces out of here, building secondary correlations out of here that our projections and our ownership check out to match up well.
Yeah, and if you guys want to get in and check this stuff out yourself, you can still do it right now for just $19. Start there. But again, we talk about this all the time. The $19 is a 5-day trial. You get everything we offer except the Discord. Optimizers always separately. I'm going to show our partner, the Solver, here in a minute to just show you exactly how you can use this tool and how I've used it in past weeks to have good success after seeing it week 1 crush. The last 2 come very close with it. So I'll show you that in 1 second. But just to break it down, some people ask this as well. It's not just NFL. It's NFL, it's NBA, it's NBA, it's PGA, it's MMA, NHL. NBA, NHL are very close to coming back. Nades is here as our guy for NHL. He heads it up. We've been crushing in the MMA streets with Title and Marley. Golf is back this week. Huge Ryder Cup contest. You'll get access to all of those. So really just saying it, get in there. But if you go with the $69 a month, it's still one of the best values in the entire industry when you consider all 6 of those sports. The content, sure, but what you're getting is these tools, the rankings, projections, ownership. I'm going to show you all of this in 1 second. And then lastly, if you're trying to get better at your game, and I think you are, if you're watching this show, you also get the 4-hour NFL DFS process course. Hoop and myself recorded this. We talk about bankroll management, contest selection, what your goals are for the season, mindset going into it, roster construction, live finals and qualifiers, showdown in general, questions, answers that members brought up, all things like this where you guys can see it. And it's all right here on the site. So if you see it, NFL drop down. Today, we're going to have the 2-game slate covered. There's a show we're doing free, Mayo Media Network, 2 p.m. Eastern today. Hoop, myself, Title, breaking down the 2-gamer and the showdown featured slate, which is the Rams, Cincinnati Bengals. But we have our guy Rio does a first look. We've got GPP and Cash Course. We do Hoops player pool, my slate plan with Hamwich doing his slate plan for FanDuel. These stack rankings you're looking at starting next week. The DVP rankings will be out with standard and advanced. So you can look by position as well. All the slate info. This is where Marley covered the tier slate yesterday, having his full breakdown in there, helping himself to 20,000. But many members still had great days playing the tier slate. Afternoon, prime time. We'd covered best ball leading up, showdown, projections and ownership, core report, player pool, slate plan. Again, all this stuff is just NFL. We have MLB going on with all of it. NBA just around the corner. Some new cool tools coming out. Ceiling rankings, correlation sheets, all of this stuff that I used last year myself, Nades as well. Nades was the single entry champion in NBA on DraftKings using these tools and these projections. I won 3 DraftKings live final seats and parlayed it to 150K using this as well. Now we have it here. PGA, Hoop and myself and others chiming in. Andy Lack coming over doing some stuff with us as well. MMA, we're going to have Gen 75. Also, I should note, doing some stuff with us for PGA also. So it's going to be awesome there. Just crushing these MMA streets. Many people have said they'll pay just for this. So Title, Marley, absolutely crushing it. Rio won back-to-back weeks. Title's been up there a bunch. Marley won a week a couple weeks ago. Hoop won a week 2 weeks ago. It's just nonstop. And then Nades, our guy, going to be crushing it with this. So all this to say, Nades, going back to these stack rankings, let's look at the solver. I want to pull this up. This has our projections in it. They do show a later update only because the way solver updates it is when we did our stuff last night for Showdown. And that's why you see the ownership got pulled. But we have it in there leading up. There's no secret sauce here. These are still our projections from yesterday of what we had. Like we had Kirk Cousins, we had Kelly, Etienne, Pollard, Dillon got pushed up, obviously, with the late news there. The big dogs up here, which we'll go through it. But let's talk about this, Nades, because you and I have done this for baseball before. Let's flip it over to football for a second. I think people are asking about how they can use this to build out. So here's one I built. Completely cheated after the fact, obviously results oriented now, but just to show it, I want to give you guys an idea. Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson are right there. Kirk Cousins, Justin Jefferson. Let's run it back with Mike Williams. He's right here. Okay, there's your starting point. The top stack is here. If I'm not playing this top stack, why not put Mostert in there? He makes sense. Go back to it here. Everyone's paying for a cheap tight end. If I'm not playing Smythe, and I'm not playing some of these other guys, well, Sam Laporta's right here. Guess what I'm also not playing? I'm not playing Gibbs. I'm not playing Craig Reynolds. So Laporta makes sense. I mentioned it. You see the Panthers a little bit down the board. The Seahawks even further down the board. So if the Seahawks are even further, and this guy's projecting okay for us, Kenneth Walker III, I know he was in G. Risen's live final winner. Well, let's plug him in. What's that secondary stack look like? Okay, Adam Thielen. He pops on this chart. You could get Thielen in there. Who's the number one defense for us? The Bills and everybody else. But can I get away with playing them now? Probably. So you go and see that, and then it leaves you $4,800. I just threw in Ford Ford obviously still popped. He popped even more to start the week. But again, just break it down. Where are the Browns? Oh, the Browns are way down here. I know it's tough for that matchup and all that goes with it, but we'll see later in Drew Dinkmeyer's lineup that won the Wildcat, he actually used Elijah Moore, who was 4,700. You could have used him. It's whatever you want to do, but he didn't pop here. Neither did the passing attack. Why not just play the guy that's ownership came down quite a bit as the week went on? This lineup scored 274 points. So give me your thoughts on this one, Nades, and then we'll keep it rolling here.
Yeah, so the piece that you say, right, is everyone says, well, I only play 3 to 5 teams, right? I don't need an optimizer. And you talk about it all the time, right? It's using an optimizer to hand build, right? Like a modified hand build. I forgot the phrase that you use when you say that, but I do the same thing, right? I play 3 to 5 teams and I use our content, right? You see the value rankings here, right? Obviously the Bills, number 1 ranked value defense, right? You go to tight end, everyone wanted to play in that $2,900 range, right? With the Smithies, those guys. Why not just go up to a guy that ranks well in our rankings right here on the sheet, the stack rankings in Laporta, and everyone, that news that came out, right? Jahmyr Gibbs, the coach speak, everyone, Jahmyr Gibbs ownership went way up, right? I fell into it. Obviously, results oriented. He didn't get there, right? But why not just go to the other side? You're already off the chalk at tight end. You're spending up a little bit. You're kind of middling that. Gibbs late coach speak as well. I know a lot of things changed there late. So that, I mean, makes a lot of sense. Obviously the Kirk Cousins, the game of the week, everyone wanted to play, right? The Cousins and Chargers game. I mean, it was right there, the value. So overall, I mean, using this optimizer and our projections and our tools, I mean, the writing is on the wall. Yeah, this is a little bit results oriented here, but realistically, when you break it down and how you just talk through it and using our content, it's really not results oriented. Everything is there. It just so happened that, hey, everything worked out the way it was. And it's just showing you that, hey, these lineups that are winning these contests, there's a process in place there and everything's right there in front of you. It's just trusting it more. And just, I mean, sometimes you have to have the run out fall your way, right? I'm sure you'll talk about that. Just putting yourself in position to win. It just goes back to how good our tools and content have been over here. I just can't get over the fact that these stack rankings go this much in depth with that second layer, because that second layer has been so beneficial and so crucial all season long.
Yeah, we're picking it all up from there. And shout out to our guys, Smarty, Sean's in here, Rin Shepherd, Jammy Sports, Richie Small. Just appreciate all you guys joining us and the others. There's lots in there, but Deep Fat says it here. Another example where you can't just fully fade the chalk games. And I want to talk about that for a second, because you said it best. Like I said it myself. Like when we're looking at this is easy to go back and build after the fact. I say it all the time. When you talk about DFS, I always say it like this. Everyone has the same puzzle pieces. We don't get the front of the box. You don't get to go out and see what the puzzle is supposed to look like till today when we go back and review it. But it's whoever builds the best version of the puzzle with all the pieces they have, the sharpest person that can put it together without needing the box and seeing what that looks like. When I'm going back and building this, though, remember, while I'm plugging in the results-oriented pieces, I just explained why they can make a lot of sense, but I'm not really being fully results-oriented when I'm using yesterday's stack rankings that we had something to help us build the puzzle before the slate came out, where a lot of us are getting our content from and using it to go and build our own lineups and help share with others to be able to build competitive lineups as we talk about. This is where you're seeing it. And that's why I brought up when Deep Fat says that, where you can't just fully fade the chalk games. Well, look at it. It's ranked by value. The Vikings and the Chargers are up there because it's a 54-point total. We all knew that. How could you get different within it? And then you go look at our projections. Kirk Cousins, a screaming value. That's why I started with him and not with the Tua stacks, even though Tua's right there and Tyreek is right there. Mostert's not that far down the page. There was other guys, Kelly, Etienne, Pollard, all these guys for sure. But my point is, when you go with the screaming value here in Cousins, and you're likely getting on one, if not two, of Williams and Allen. By the way, insane Allen throwing touchdowns to Williams. Like if you double stack that, as we'll see later, really good runouts today, or yesterday, I should say, for that. But that's where you can see where the Mostert play makes sense, is if I still want to be in on this game. It really likes them in the stack rankings. It really likes the passing game. But if you can't get to the passing game or you're not going to put those pieces, it's fine to go and get a piece from that game, not knowing you'd need both running backs, but just to say it. If you want to play a guy like Laporta because you don't want to play someone that's cheaper, you want to get more balanced, you can do that. But then all that allows you to fit this in. It's just a way to show you guys where you can use those tools and get after it that way. Let's move on though, Nades. Let's go to this $20 Millie Maker winner. You see it here all over the place. It was like, I forget how many. I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the top 11 or something. But yeah, you see it here. Tyreek, Adam Thielen, second place. Adam Thielen, Tyreek. It's the exact same lineup, obviously, with that score. As I mentioned, Jared Goff and Walker versus a chain and who was it? Herbert was the 2v2 off the perfect lineup. But let's talk about this one, Nades. You got Goff to Laporta, couple of Dolphins, Keenan Allen, Tank Dell, Kenneth Walker with that Adam Thielen secondary stack, and then Buffalo defense. No running back DST that Fantasy Labs does pull up, and no bring back is the only two notes that really stand out. But give me your thoughts on this one. And the chat, throw your thoughts out there too if you guys have any. Smash that like, hammer that like I say. Subscribe if you haven't done so already. It helps us out, get more free content for you guys. But Nades, let's talk about this one.
Yeah, I mean, just ultimately the stone nuts. I mean, congratulations to landing on this. But the Mostert Tyreek combo, I think it's an interesting combo. We've seen this quite a bit, right? Running back, wide receiver, one of the same team. The thoughts are, right, a guy like Tyreek, he doesn't need those bombs. Obviously, he has those bombs, but I mean, they get him that ball in so many different ways in Miami, right? He's a playmaker. He's a special kid. So they throw him he can get there, right, for those catches and rack up those points, those yards after catch. That, and then Mostert can be the goal line guy, right? So they can both get there. And in that sense, you're just taking a shot that, hey, I'm going to bank on a different quarterback that allows me to stack a lineup like Jared Goff that's cheaper than Tua, that just builds a different connection. So I've see this correlation quite a bit actually all season long, this running back and wide receiver from the same team. And I think it's definitely an underutilized stack, right? In terms of lineup construction, because so many people, right, want to do quarterback, wide receiver, tight end, or two wide receivers with a run back, and they always want to throw that quarterback in there. So that's one thing that stood out to me. We see this correlation coming much more. The Kenneth Walker play, I thought was a great play. His ownership obviously got up there. Carolina's been gashed all season long on the ground. I mean, week 1, 44 point, the Atlanta backs, right? 44 DraftKings points last week against New Orleans, right? With that situation, the Tony Jones, all that, they still put up almost 20 DraftKings points. And then obviously Kenneth Walker goes out there and smashes too. So that was a play there, right? When people were going to the Geno, the Lockett, the Metcalf stacks, that's a great play, right? You leveraging that, throwing Kenneth Walker in there, who is the lead guy in Seattle, right? You know, he's going to get the workload. He's going to get the carries. So that was great. The Tank Dell, obviously the number one value play of everyone's radar, all on the slate. He was projected to be even higher owned than he came in at, right? Coming in at 21%, I think is a little bit under where he was projected. He was the clear cut value play. The cheap guy, everyone was going to. So that kind of just fit in. The Adam Thielen, right, mini stack there with the Kenneth Walker, right, with Andy Dalton coming in, the whole narrative there between the connection between Andy Dalton and Thielen. But not only Thielen was involved in the offense, even with Bryce Young under center, right, playing 90+% of the snaps. He had 7 targets in week 2. And now you have the additional connection there between him and Andy Dalton. I think makes sense. It's also a secondary stack. The Buffalo defense, obviously the number 1 projected defense against Washington. There was a little weather concern there as well, where people like the defenses a little bit more. So overall, I mean, I think it's a good build. The Keenan Allen, just one-off, right? Hey, you're not playing the Jeffersons. You're not playing the Cousins. You're not playing that game. Let's just grab the target monster there in Keenan Allen. You know, Keenan Allen's floor seems like 15 to 18 DraftKings points every single week with just the targets alone. And you're already off the quarterbacks in that game. Just grab the best piece that you know is going to be involved every time. Throw him in there. So overall, I think it's a great build. I didn't look at his user exposures too much, but yeah, it looks like he went significantly over the weight on Buffalo defense and the value play there at tight end in Smithy, and then everything else kind of just fit in around that. So he picked his 2 chalk values that he wanted to go, Buffalo and Smithy, and went from there when I looked at his exposures.
Yeah, there's his. I was surprised too. I actually thought Buffalo would come in higher. It was the Jets that came in the highest. That's the one I saw the delta on earlier when I was saying those numbers. It was the Jets 1, Buffalo 2. But crazy considering like Buffalo just smashed and everyone did like them. I think in higher stakes, you saw it higher as well. So just to note that, but just going back to it here for a minute, and the chat's catching on. Like every week we get a sharp group in here. First off, shout out to our guy, Chris. He said the info was great. They're talking about SHIPITNation.com. Used all the info, built it out. Love you guys. Appreciate you, Chris. That's awesome. Who else was it here? Said, Chris, can't wait till Eckler gets back. Yeah, we didn't talk about Kelly because he's not going to show up in any of these lineups. That's for sure. Everybody that had a Kelly lineup was hopeful that they could switch it to Zach Moss, who did enough, did a lot. If you had Kelly lineups and could have got to Zach Moss somewhere, cost me quite a bit over on FanDuel, but just to note it. And then, we talked about this earlier, Rin, like he has everything but the perfect quarterback and running back switch from the perfect lineup, but still almost 300 points is pretty insane. Our guy, Go Collect, no run back is fine. That's right. Just a skinny stack. And then I like this one, a couple more here. This one first, Sean. When everyone's playing the running backs, you can go just Laporta, but you also can go both, right? That's the way to get the leverage that way. 6,500 for Goff, fair. Like you could build it out that way. And then Chris made this good point that will come up when we get to our DVP rankings, especially the advanced. The Dalton thing was only really one piece of it, more of like the narrative and the joke, I guess. Like Nate said, he'd already been involved, Thielen that is, in that offense the previous week when we played it on the 2-game slate. He did well. And then on top of it, anybody going against Seattle right now in that slot position has been doing quite well. So I think he's been fine when it comes to that. Definitely makes sense there. And then I think that was it for now. But yeah, Kelly killed me too. Killed a lot of people. I don't think you can be results oriented as much on that as much as it's easy to see after the fact. But depending on your lineup build too, if you were going like a Herbert stack, I think that's when it didn't make sense. Like that was a way to go away from it. And we'll talk about that in a little bit here. But for me, fine with this lineup. Otherwise, like you said, just grabbing pieces of the big offenses, still having something from that game with no Eckler, just plugging in the best value plays, getting that other secondary stack. He did this a bunch. Even his third place lineup was like Tua, Mostert, Tyreek, went with Del Schultz. And we've seen these little mini combo packs work out a little bit more, right? Still kept the same. Great build still. I think these are fine. Next one was Dalton with Thielen. Got rid of the Seattle piece in here. Mostert, went with the Moss, Pittman. So I also think it's hard to say. This is sometimes how optimizers will build it out. But what made me think it was a hand build is this not mistake as much as like maybe he just didn't see it when he went and built 1 and 2 in where the Thielen, you wouldn't get this with an optimizer like the swap there. That's more like a hand build thing. So interesting either way. Anything else you want to talk about on these just because, but go back. Renegade just answered. We actually answered this already. It's the ownerships go with the API of LineStar. We talked about this on previous shows. I mentioned today, but when we move to the evening slate, it ends up pulling it and moving it around. So that's why it gets pulled out. But again, we're working on it. So it's always something, it's good feedback that you have there. It's something that we're working on, but just to make it known, the projections stay in, the ownership goes out. That's why. Anything else on this one, Nades, before we go to the next one?
So it does look like he has some sort of correlation rule in there with his running back, wide receiver, one of the same team, or wide receiver from the other team on the run back. Just looking at some of these, which I think is a pretty good correlation stack, like I talked about, right? That running back, wide receiver, one of the same team. They both can get there, especially with a guy like Tyreek Hill or a target monster. Michael Pittman, same thing with the Zach Moss, right? Pittman gets you down there. Zach Moss gets the touchdowns in the goal line if it's not Pittman, because looking at a lot of these teams, it's either like the Kenneth Walker, Adam Thielen correlation right there in that same game, or it's like the Pittman, Zach Moss, or Mostert, Tyreek Hill, right? So it does seem like some sort of correlation built in there. I think that's a very good thing. Obviously, it could be a little results oriented here, but I see this quite a bit all season long of that sort of correlation: running back, wide receiver, one of the other team, or wide receiver, one of the same team.
Yeah, it seems weird, to be honest. Like, one thing about it is that it feels almost like, again, it's hard to tell because of this spot I mentioned up here where it seems like a hand build, and I'm not shitting on the guy. It's an amazing day, a great lineup. I'm just saying I've seen people set up the rule, obviously, where you have a running back with somebody from the opposite, wide receiver or tight end from the opposing team. That's very common. What it almost looks like, though, is like you said, you're seeing like, okay, that one's stacked, but in here, where was the other one I just looked at? Like Moss, Pittman, right? Is the version there. And here on this one was the other one was was Raheem Mostert and Tyreek. This is stacked, so it's not really the same. Raheem, Tyreek. It's almost like with the rule, if he is setting it up, he wasn't switching that it's opposing team. He let it be like either or because he's actually getting it more on the same team than not. But in some cases, it could just be wanting a piece of that offense as well. I want to see my buddy Jeff Drazak, really good player. Meet him pretty much every year, at least once at one of these live finals or something, just to see what type of lineup he had. I don't just want to take the one lineup. I could look at all his exposures, but in the spirit of time, just want to see what the lineup he was sweating yesterday. Lamar, Aguilar with no OBJ and moving off of the Zay Flowers chalk. I see that one. He's got Zach Moss as the run back. Paid up for Kelsey, Buffalo D, Kenneth Walker, Tank Dell, Raheem Mostert. Not playing that stack. Makes sense going to Raheem Mostert. Not using much out of that game, so getting the guy without Eckler, fine. The best value play. Good running back. Pay up at tight end. Interesting build there. Anything you see with these other ones, Nades? And if not, we can move on to the Wildcat.
No, same thing. Just grabbing that Keenan Allen. We know Keenan Allen's the guy, the target tree, the target monster, right? In the Chargers. He's already not playing that game, but he still wants a piece of that total, that high total everyone wants to. He's just going to grab the best piece from that, right? He's not going all the way up to pay for Jefferson because he's got Kelsey. So overall, amazing build. The Zach Moss run back on the Lamar Jackson stack makes some sense. And then he's not playing Tyreek either, right? So grab a piece of that offense there in Miami. Why not Mostert? And obviously it just fell into place.
Yeah, and I will say this too. We've seen this the past couple of weeks. At least, again, this result's oriented just to note it though. Like again, these big O-line injuries. Geno had a bunch of O-line injuries, goes off and had a game. And I talked about this one directly. I actually took Lamar out of my core report on the site, and it's fine. I'll show the builds at the end, but just to say it is that the interesting note with this one was like I said, it's only going to go one of two ways. With missing Ronnie Stanley in the center, Tanderbaum, and all these guys, it was like it's going to be where he either goes off and runs wild because of that, almost like what we saw Geno do the week before, or it's going to be a very bad day. And in the end, it was a bad day. That obviously a homer here. That was definitely not a good call to see in the overtime, and Indy gets the job done. Hurt some survivor pools and things like that for people I know, but just in general, Lamar, big fantasy day still with 32 points. And then our guy Go Collect mentioned paid up at Kelsey instead of Andrews and got his love for the passing game through Aguilar here. Nothing worked out. I'm just saying still had a shot. If that goes off instead, it's another, let's say he gets a touchdown in the end. It's another touchdown here, another touchdown there. That's a big time difference in the overall day for my buddy Jeff. So shout out to Jeff. And then last one was Mike. Yeah, there's a picture out there on Twitter. It says this just describes the day. It's like all the Denver guys on the ground, Surtain and everyone worried about this. I said it earlier on the First Look show with my guy Degenerate 75. He did a little short clip of it. I said there's going to be a day where doesn't matter if you try and bracket this guy or double coverage him or something, that Tyreek is just going to stuff that football under his helmet and just give two-piece signs on the way out as he walks into the end zone. The guy's just way too fast. It's insane. And then somebody showed, speaking of insane, a chain. They showed him and his stats. Someone showed the numbers on him yesterday, and he's actually faster than Tyreek in one of the runs that they did and breakdown. So a lot of speed. It was Scott Barrett, by the way, great follow on Twitter over at Fantasy Points. He posted it, a conversation he'd had with someone. They were showing this all off back and forth. There was a really cool tidbit I thought that he broke down there. So just, again, something to keep an eye on when you're trying to spot this stuff. But again, you don't need those types of plays. Like it's not, you want them for sure. And they showed up and they crushed, but it's very unlikely they end up on the winning lineup because you get them right. And then that you also have to get everything else right. And they're already so low owned. That's also another conversation around why these chalk defenses can work, is because when you look at it, it's like, yeah, defense, it's just easy to go get different elsewhere. And I'm not disagreeing with this. I can stand by this take as well. Like I always like to get a little bit different at it, and that's fine because it's such high variance. But even when you find the 1%er that breaks the slate, do they end up on your exact lineup with the other stuff that you need to get right and all that? And that's why it becomes a little bit tougher. And sometimes the best play is get different elsewhere and just play the defense that you know is projecting well, in a good spot, fair price, all of those other factors. A study to be talked about on another day. Let's move on. Let's go to where are we going here? The 333, the Wildcat.
Dink.
Yeah, Dink's lineup. Obviously, Dink, extremely sharp. Levitan posted on Twitter yesterday. I know he's biased with ETR. Shout out to them. He goes, I know I'm biased, but Dink, one of the sharpest at still playing the game and teaching the game. Definitely agree with that. Respect Dink a whole lot. He does a lot for helping people get better at DFS, something I love doing as well. Big passion of mine. He also does the Welly Maker every year. If you don't know, go check it out on Twitter at Dinkpiece. You can donate to his Welly Maker Fund, and he matches it, puts just a bunch of money back, helping people out. So congrats to him, $350,000 day. But this lineup, we'll spend some time on here for a minute or two because I love this build, Nades. Just breaking it down, Herbert, Keenan Allen, Williams, the run back with Madison. If you're not playing Tua, you're not playing Tyreek, you're not playing all, we already talked about that. Just fill this in. I mean, shit, you can go back to the stack rankings and get it right here. Herbert, Williams, Allen, you're not playing this, play Mostert. You're not playing this, play Madison. Like, you can do lots of stuff when you're seeing this stuff, but just to note it, Kirk, I loved the matchup there. He actually had the worst day, I think, of his squad, or one of the worst. I mean, more points per dollar is still better, but just to show it, I'll go through it all in a second, but just to say it, I loved Kirk yesterday. I loved the Trevor Lawrence stack. That was pretty embarrassing. They still came back and put up numbers, almost 300 yards for Lawrence, and he basically didn't show up for the first half. So just to note how much better that spot could have been. Houston and Stroud side, we talked about liking the other side in that game. Laporta, no Gibbs, no Craig Reynolds, no Amon-Ra, no Reynolds, no anything. Not playing anybody else here. It's fine. Love it. More of a balanced build, too. No Tank Dell, no cheap guys in there. Elijah Moore, interestingly enough, not sure about this play, but I would suspect it was a little bit of not playing Ford, because if you look, Ford was 4,800, $100 left on the table. He could have played Ford here as well and had an even bigger day, but who cares? I mean, he had a huge day, so it's nothing. Can't do better than first in this tournament, at least. So just to note it, shout out to Dink, but a really sharp lineup overall. Expect nothing less. What's your thoughts on this one, Nades, as we break it down?
Yeah, I'll start with the Elijah Moore. I actually played a decent amount of Elijah Moore. He got 7 targets week 1, 9 targets week 2, running a ton of routes there. He is the number 2 guy there, right behind Amari Cooper. You're already not playing that. And it's more of the balanced build that you see here, right? Could have he went Calvin Ridley in one of those cheap tight ends? Probably. I don't know if he would have had the exact salary to get to a guy like Elijah Moore. But just looking at the overall total construction here, he went more balanced, right? He didn't go the 9K receivers with the Tyreek Hills, the Jeffersons, that to give more value plays with all guys that are in good spots, right? The Madison on the backside of that, because he's not playing Osborne. He's not playing Hawkinson, who some people are going to in that stack to get a little bit different. He's not playing Jefferson. He's not playing Tyreek. So grab the two running backs. Why can't it be the running backs in that game and not those receivers or tight ends from the Tyreek game and the Jefferson, Osborne, Hawkinson game? So I think that's an amazing play right there. We know Mostert's heavily involved in that offense regardless, either way, right? Even with the Tyreeks, the A-chains, all that stuff that rolled out. Obviously, when a team scores 70 points, there's enough fantasy points to go around for everyone. He wasn't going in here expecting Miami to score 70 points by any means. It was just the overall construction. He's not playing Tyreek Hill, so I think that's a great point. The Christian Kirk, right? Didn't have the money to get up at Ridley, wanted to go more balanced. He liked getting off of those chalk tight ends in Laporta there. Just grab a piece of that Atlanta game there in the good dome, the environment there. So overall, thought that was a good play. Buffalo defense, obviously, I'm sure I didn't look at, I think he only had 5 lineups in here, right? Let me look at his. So it looks like he did spread out it's interesting to note, this was his only lineup that he had Buffalo defense out of his 5, just kind of fit the build. So overall, I mean, incredible build, very similar to how I build lineups, how you build lineups. I know that.
If you have it up there real quick, did he play Tyreek in any?
He only played 5 teams, and he had Tyreek in 3 out of 5. So he had Tyreek in 3 out of 5, and he had Mostert in 1 out of 5. So like this was one of his leverage lineups without Tyreek.
And I really like that call, actually. So I didn't dig that deep into it, but just to note that when he's not playing Tyreek, he's still getting the piece of the game this way. Obviously, this is what I talked about earlier. Like, you're not playing Kelly. You could, and anything could happen and work out. But I just say, like, I see why he didn't. It makes more sense. You're going to this and this. You're saying that beats out Kelly. You're not going to Jefferson. You're playing let me play Madison. You're not playing Tyreek. This is where sometimes, again, the puzzle thing I talked about earlier, but you go back and see it. You're not playing ETN. You're playing Christian Kirk, who is still popular. I get it, but I'm just saying, like, you can still make it up. Gibbs, you're not playing him, even with Montgomery out. Okay, I'll play Laporta. Excuse me, you're not playing Ford. And I should note, too,
so I'm
the other
looking
thing
at
I thought of here was the Amari Cooper. This is kind of like the perfect little pivot here, Nades, because if you're not going to play Ford, you don't want to play that matchup. I understand that fully. We talked about that plenty on our shows and stuff, but also everyone liked Amari Cooper. I know I did in that matchup against Tennessee. They just get crushed. It's kind of like your middle ground. All right, I can't play Amari. I can't play Ford. I'm not going to play Ford. I'll play Moore. And like you said, the numbers were there for Moore as well. I wouldn't say it was a bad play. I just can't imagine he would have projected very well. I know he didn't for us. So just to note that. And then you can get away with playing Buffalo here. I'll highlight this. Still low ownership overall. Elijah Moore, Laporta, Herbert, way lower owned than Cousins in this. What was Cousins? Let me see. 20% versus 6%. So that just goes to show that. Hawkinson, he didn't get to there. I'm trying to see if anyone got up there. Musgrave was 7%. Trying to see if any Smythe lineups made it up there because you could still get away with it. Yeah, Smythe, 17.5%. So just to note that you're getting half the ownership. You're going up in money. But again, that might change. I think that's what it would be, right? Smythe and Cooper would have been a QB2 there, I think.
Yeah, because it's not enough money to go Ridley Smythe instead of Kirk Laporta. But so yeah,
Cooper put up 27. And where did I have Smythe here? So it's like 30 points, give or take. And he got more out of it anyway and didn't eat more chalk. So overall, again, expect nothing less from Dink.
Another thing too I want to call out is he had 60% Joshua Kelly. So this was his leverage off of his Joshua Kelly stack as well, right? If it's not Joshua Kelly, which he had in 3 out of his 5 teams, right? I'm not going to talk total exposures because he only played 5 teams, but he knows 3 out of 5 teams he's going Kelly. In his other team, one of the other 2 teams he has left that he's entering, why not load up on the Herbert, right? The double stack there. Because if Kelly's getting there, he's got 3 teams on the other hand. If Kelly doesn't get there, maybe it's because of the air game, right? With Herbert, Keenan Allen, always involved. Mike Williams, one of the best. He was underpriced for the role and his work. So that's another thing too on how when you're building 3 to 5 teams, how you can kind of build your lineups, right? To give yourself different outs when you're already going in on a game.
Yeah, and we'll do a little bit of a deep dive here. We have time today. Last week we had Tyler on from Line Star, but just a good one to do because I think this is the thing too. A lot of people watching this probably playing just 1 to 5 lineups each week. Why not learn from one of the best? And sometimes you have winning lineups and you look at them because they won the tournament. Sometimes you have winning lineups from players that are great and you can learn a lot from that and dig in. So I like what you just said. Obviously the winning lineup shows up here first, 250K, but it was interesting the piece you added there. Like, so look, Tyreek 1, Tyreek 2, Tyreek 3. I'll go to this one in a second. Very interesting. No Tyreek, but Craycraft or Craycraft, however you want to say it, like for him. So just to go look at this, that makes sense. And then Kelly, 1, 2, 3 as well. So really good separation. And then knowing that if you're not doing something, how can you flip the build? No Kelly, go Herbert, Allen, Williams. No Tyreek, go Mostert. Like that starts you off with 4 pieces out of the gate. And then you can see where else you're going from there. Look at his next lineup here. We got Stroud with Tank Dell. ETN does the job of moving the needle here. Like, again, this one scored 183, but just to note it, the idea is ETN gets it rolling. Stroud and Tank Dell on the run back. You've got Bijan Laporta, secondary stack. You've got Osborne, Mike Williams, secondary stack, and getting pieces of these other good games, by the way. This was the 2 biggest totals on the slate, besides Kansas City, Chicago, who we didn't talk a lot about, but just to note, that was, again, expensive to get to, challenging to figure out on the Mahomes side, and then you go back and look, like, again, another thing I use this tool for, like, even with cheap pieces, with fields, with projections, with everything all focused in, even at low ownership, even all that, this just is not popping. It's literally the opposite way of Tua. This is where, again, I think, pour one out for some of our boys. I know Ham liked him. Some others do. I get it. You can get a guy like Fields at 1 or 2% that we've seen have 40-point 40-point outcomes. But that's why I'm taking these things into consideration more and looking at them. It just didn't make a lot of sense. So he really got after good game environments, high potential scoring opportunities, still got unique with it with the lower ownership. Cleveland D, really nobody on them. Lots of guys under 10% in this lineup. Any quick thoughts on this one, Nades? We got 5. I want to go through all 5 quickly, but we'll go speed it up. Any thoughts on this one you want to add?
No, that CJ Stroud stack was popping on our stuff over here too. Another little plug for our content over here. The ETN could have even had a bigger day, right? Gets Vulture, does all the work, and what's his name comes in, and in Vulture's ETN, that was definitely. But Houston's been attacked through the ground all the time, right? He's already not playing the Lawrence side, so hey, Houston's historically we've targeted running backs all last year against them. ETN involved in the passing game too. Obviously did enough there. Could have had a bigger day. Run back there in the stack makes sense. Grabs the other two big game environments with pieces that are definitely going to be involved. And then the Cleveland defense, right? At home, good defense, right? With the Myles Garrett, all that against Tennessee there just kind of fit. And it's at that 3,300 range, a little bit above that chalk, the Jets, the Bills, right?
Yeah, I should note here, Buffalo came in at almost 18%. This is the 333 Wildcat. This pissed me off. Like this is, this happens. And I talk about it. I played them too. I like the Commanders because like I said, first off, it's just a savings. But I guess when you look at it, like results is one, but even still, what were they really going to get us? I don't know. And when it was only $500 more to get to the Bills versus Howell, maybe that's in hindsight something I can look at as a leak just to go back on, even besides the results. Just in that case, it wasn't like Buffalo was Dallas at 4,400, who I also liked and thought if you were going to pay up, you can get to a team like Dallas. Let's do it. But when it's only $500 more, you can find it in a lot of spots. But here was this other one. We won't go through all these, but just Tua, Tyreek, River. Did he have a run back? No. Don't need to run it back from Denver. That was one note earlier too when we talked about that lineup with Goff and Laporta. You don't need to run back the Atlanta side. You could have had Bijan in there if you want to say the same thing he did. Dink did here with not even with Bijan, but just saying with ETN. To say he gets the ball rolling and then you get that stack the other way. That lineup earlier could have had Goff, Laporta with Bijan as a way to do something differently there. I'm sure lots of lineups were like that. Got Calvin Ridley in this one with Tank Dell as that side. Did play Kelsey because you were able to pay up. Here's interesting too. He did play Jerome Ford, but not in the other lineup, which would again not been that much more, 7 points, but still just interesting to note. Maybe just didn't want him there. And then I wonder if he played any Cleveland D with Jerome Ford. Got both of them in action, but didn't play any together, which we see all the time. Fantasy Lab says, they look for that. But again, I've seen that stack fall off a little bit more over the years. So it's not as popular anyway, just to note it. And then this was a complete overstack, all four guys, Smythe, River, Hill, Tua. Then you get your LAC, Minnesota. You get a guy like Kendre Miller, who, you could see get there at 4,300, but obviously did not perform. Kirk as the one-off, Cleveland D again. And then lastly was Cousins, Jefferson, Addison with Kelly, Gibbs, and Pitts as the secondary. Still some plays in there that make sense. So again, these ones didn't score as well, but you can see how he builds and goes about it. The bigger thing for me, the takeaway, Nades, was just the leverage plays. Like you could see how he got leverage on the slate. Like you mentioned, between when he does this, he does Tyreek lineups, he's not getting Mostert in there. And when he's not playing any of those guys with the overstacks that he had in the other versions, he gets Mostert in there to finish the job. Any final thoughts on Dink's lineups? His 5 in the 333 Wildcat.
No, very, very good player. Obviously, very incredible. Does great stuff. And it's very similar how I build, right? I play 3 to 5 teams each Sunday. So I build very similar. So just studying players like that play like you do is the most important thing. That's why we do these shows. That's why we try and talk through them. We don't come on here and just try and be results oriented. It's all about a process, building a process and helping you teach how to create a process, right? Because you can't, everyone always says, you got to trust the process, but you have to have a process to trust in order to trust something. You can't just trust nothing.
Yeah, this was my 3 max. I'll pull it up right quick because this is what I went with on the site. I went with Lawrence, Madison, Ridley, Kirk, and Tank Dell. And some did good, some did bad. Lawrence, like I said, this is basically 2 halves of work. I wish I had went with the Stroud side. He was in there as one of my cheap options to play, but just so people see it, like this is obviously a play what I say. This is one of the main lineups for me. I had this in qualify. I had this in the 1250 FFWCQ, which obviously did not cash. So just to note that you can see it though, the build was very similar in a lot of angles, like, lower ownership, had some of these lower owned spots mixed in, not quite under 10 on those, but the Miles Sanders play was one. But just to see it, Lawrence, Ridley, Kirk, run it back with Tank Dell. Sometimes I like doing this, use all 3 wide receiver slots up on same game, same spot. And then how can I get different within it? Well, what would shut down the scoring in that game more than, if not playing Jefferson, if not doing that. I missed Miami in this, I think is a big mistake because obviously they were popping off the charts on all of our stuff. So as a way to get it, I could have got somebody in here. Like there was definitely a way. Maybe it's Washington at 2,400, and then I can go up to Mostert at 6,000 and at least still have pieces of those games not playing Buffalo. Again, that would have tanked, but I would have got a lot more points here. It wouldn't have made the world of difference, but just to see the difference for me is like the mistake is not getting no Atlanta, Detroit, no Miami, no spots that we knew were good spots that I could have got more from, and just looking at it from that angle. So that was one. This, though, Nades, we'll talk about more, was the lineup that I had on the site that I switched off of, not because of weather. I know we were watching that some. I just really thought with no Zay Jones, the matchups, Houston's secondary just entirely depleted, 2 cornerbacks and a free safety all out, with Lawrence waiting to have a big game, with people on ETN, all of those factors to me, with us liking Kirk, Dell, somewhat ETN, some of these other guys that I mentioned, Stroud, I thought this was a way to get different with it. So I moved to that one, but I did not move off Lamar. I stayed on it. I said, I'm still playing it. Someone asked, why did you switch? I explained all that to them in the Discord, but I did still like this stack. And if you look at it here with OBJ out, with most people going to either Kelsey or a cheap tight end, and then maybe even Hawkinson was like 12 or 13%, but just to say it, or 7 in some places, but in other tournaments, he got more because of that game stack. Lamar, Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, Moss Madison was what I had originally had up there. Again, no Mostert. I think my biggest leak or takeaway from yesterday was the Miami stuff because I like Tua, and I had a bunch of Tua stacks. He was in my top 4 on the site as far as the content goes. So just to note that as well. It's just, that's the mistake where Dink got it right in his and paid off in a big way, but was like, if I'm not going to be in on those stacks, let me do this instead. And I had Madison, or I had Mostert in like my main, one of my main big cash game style lineups that I use in some of the qualifiers. Again, wrong places. In the King of the Beach that got second yesterday or something, I think I was 27 points ahead of third and 20 back of first. It's just the way it goes sometimes, but that had Mostert in it, and Kirk Cousins and Allen and Williams and all these other guys that went off. But just to note it, Buffalo, again, same type of ownership, Nades, but you got still pieces of the Minnesota LAC game. You got Moss as the run back for that. You got the secondary stack with Nico Collins Kirk. I love this lineup, by the way. This is what I started with as my main. It didn't do well. It's still, I think it min cashed here, but 176 ain't going to cut it when you need 300. But just to see it, Jackson, Flowers, Andrews, run it back with Moss, secondary in Williams and Madison, the biggest total on the game, on the day, secondary of the game I loved the most, the other game that I liked the most, and then Buffalo, no Miami is the problem for me, Nades. Give me your thoughts on these lineups. These were the 2 cores, one that I started with, one that I switched to on the site.
Yeah, no, very good builds. I build very similar. You kind of already hit on it, right? You were obviously fading that Miami game, right? The high offense there. Would have maybe liked to see Mostert, but obviously that's hindsight 2020, right? In that game, if you are fading it, because they did have a high total, right? But you can always get away with fading games like that. It's NFL. But overall, it's very similar to how I build. I built very similar lineups in the $33 5 Maddox. Actually, my main lineup was Trevor Lawrence, Ridley, Ingram, with the run back. So overall, very good. And we build very similar because I've taken a lot of tidbits from you over the years.
Yeah, I was trying to find it here. Shout out to our guy, Dwayne, NYG fan 56. Love to see you. We just think so much alike, and that's kind of the angle there. But like what he's saying is this, that was the other angle to it that you could have went. If you already like Dell, you already like Kirk, you already like ETM, whatever. We saw it with Dink. He just had it up there. He had it simple. Stroud, Dell, and then go from there. I can go back to that one, actually. That was probably the best one to look because we're going to get out of here in a second anyway. But just to go back to Dink's lineups, scroll down here and see. Maybe the second one.
That's right there.
Yeah. So he still went with a little bit more of a balanced approach, but Stroud with Tank Dell and ETN, I thought was fine. And now he went up at Bijan. This is where, and kept it with Tyreek and Mike Williams, but you could have got it a little bit different here. Like if, you plug in a smaller running back, a cheaper running back here, you can get, and a cheaper tight end, you would have been able to do a little bit more with the Jefferson piece. But I do think in general, it's still very solid. We talked about it already, but yeah, definitely love this call where you can get the cheap quarterback that makes sense in the good game, get a cheap stacking piece in like Tank Dell, get those 49 points, give or take, just over, and be able to build it out from there. So I love that build. And then you can fit in whatever you want, how you want to approach it, whether it's stars and scrubs or balanced. Definitely think it's good. And then BK Ryder, I'm not sure if this is the one that did it, but he won the mega. It looks like it was. Yeah, so this is just a quick one because we're getting out of here. But Cousins, this one won the 44-44 mega milli yesterday for the full million. And he came first and third. Shout out Rob Kaufman, great dude, in fourth. Ricky D, super sharp. Always, we looked up Need Lunch Money last week. These guys just continue to crush. That's why we're here trying to learn and get better. But the winning lineup, just to note it on that one, was Cousins with Osborne, run it back with Keenan Allen, couple Miami pieces in the Mostert and the Tyreek. Second time we've seen that today. Value plays in Moss, Dell, Laporta, and then landed on the Seattle D, left a couple $100 on the table. Great build. We already went through some of this stuff. Nades, any final thoughts from you before we get out of here?
No, overall, I mean, just don't be results oriented. If you're building lineups, right? Like we see a lot of correlation between a lot of these top lineups built the same way, right? Whether you're skinny stacking, right? It's overall a lot of correlation. Obviously, the perfect lineup is the perfect lineup. There a lot of weird stuff happens, but just continue to keep sticking to your process. Continue to use this tool, right? Fantasy Labs, NFL contest dashboard. It's free to use. You can go through all the top players and definitely review it. I spend a ton of time reviewing lineups with players that like Dink, that build very similar to me, play a couple teams. Obviously, whether the stakes are the same or different, it doesn't matter. You can still learn. You can still grab pieces. So continue to do that. And ready to we got 2 more games tonight. The week's not over. So if you've had a bad week, the week is not over yet. So you can have a great night tonight.
Yeah. We still got tonight. The week's not over yet. Like you said, love doing these reviews on Monday with you. Shout out to our guys, G Ryzen. First of all, I just saw this now, but we reviewed Irby, my buddy, a couple weeks ago. He won the Millie Maker. Sorry for Irby. Our guy G Ryzen had to take it down and get it done. Some big name studs underneath. Papa Gates, Vasa, Ricky D, all extremely sharp long-term players that have just been crushing forever. And then shout out to Big Marley. Like I said, he's been grinding. He's on a little heater. Won the main MMA 2 weeks ago for like 12,500 or something. And he just plays his own stuff. He does all the tiers content on the site. He played his own stuff. He played about 20 lineups. You can count them up. Treats it like a 20 max. Threw it in there. First and fifth. Big day for him on a small investment. I believe this is $5 to buy in 2 nades for the flea flicker. So yeah. Shout out to those guys. Huge day for them. Excited for both of them. And then shout out to the members. Trav won $15,550. Bring the Noise. I reviewed his lineup earlier in the Discord. Just did it this morning instead of doing it on the show. Really good lineup. He's one of the guys that wishes instead of Kelly here, he had Zach Moss, but $1,000, said some excellent calls on the show. Helped me a ton. B-Wald won a $470 ticket. Love the show. Helped me secure a small ticket for a chance. Well, this is what I talk about with satellites all the time. A lot of people don't play them. You should. Now in the running in a $470 buy-in to have his way into some of these bigger tournaments or these live finals. And then Lay the House, who crushes it, been crushing it all season with MLB main slate, had 2 MLB showdown slates in the same weekend, and then shipped last night on the NFL one as well. I guess I cut the screenshot off, but just to show it, he said I wasn't done, I guess. That was in NFL last night. So really good stuff there. You guys can go over to the website, check it out, shipitnation.com. The Monday Night Football Showdown show at 2 p.m. Eastern will be Hoop, Title, and myself on the Mayo Media Network. You'll be able to see everything when it comes to that 2-gamer tonight. You'll also be able to see everything when it comes to Showdown for the featured slate. If you guys want to get in and get signed up, go there now. You can get in as low as $19 to get everything but Discord, but you're missing out if you don't get the Discord. So $69 a month gets you all these sports, lots that are coming back. If you're buying a month now, you're getting NBA opening night, which is the 24th next month. Today's the 25th. So NHL comes back on the 10th. You're getting NBA opening night. All the MMA, there's a break this week, but it'll be back. Ryder Cup for PGA this week, and then 2 or 3 more tournaments that are coming up for them. MLB ongoing like always, and NFL. So $69 a month. You can't beat it. That's going to do it for this one, though, guys. For Nades, for myself, ToeTagginTambo, let's ship it!